I stared at the pink and gold balloons floating against our living room ceiling, each one a reminder that today wasn't just about celebrating my daughter's 8th birthday. It was about surviving another encounter with my ex-husband, Edward. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted the Happy Birthday Callie banner for the 10th time. Mom, is Dad really bringing his girlfriend? Callie's voice startled me from behind. I turned to find her already dressed in her new party dress, her dark curls perfectly framing her worried face. I'm Phoebe, and these moments, these little glimpses of anxiety in my daughter's eyes, are exactly why I'd spent the last year meticulously planning my revenge against Edward. Hey, sweetie, yes, Genesis is coming, but today is all about you, okay? I knelt down to her level, straightening the bow on her dress. And look who's here early to help us set up. Right on cue, my best friend Stella burst through the front door, arms loaded with shopping bags. The party fairy has arrived, and she comes bearing last-minute supplies. Callie's face lit up as she ran to help Stella unpack, momentarily forgetting her concerns about her father's new girlfriend. I watched them together, grateful for Stella's perfect timing and unwavering support since the divorce. You're a lifesaver, I whispered as Stella passed me, squeezing her arm. And you're too tense, she whispered back. Remember the plan. Everything's in place. The doorbell rang again, and this time it was my brother Davis, carrying a massive wrapped present that barely fit through the doorway. Where's my favorite niece? Uncle Davis, Callie squealed, abandoning the party supplies to launch herself at him. Careful with that dress, young lady, I called out, but I couldn't help smiling. Having my support system here early helped steady my nerves. The next hour flew by in a whirlwind of last-minute preparations. I was hanging the final streamers when my phone buzzed. A text from Vincenzo, my attorney. All set for Monday. Stay calm today. Phoebe, Stella called from the kitchen. You might want to see this. I found her by the window, watching Edward's black Mercedes pull into the driveway. Genesis sat in the passenger seat, looking exactly like the Instagram model she was, young, gorgeous, and completely unaware she was dating a snake. Game face on, Stella muttered, squeezing my shoulder. The doorbell rang, and Callie raced to answer it before I could stop her. Daddy, there's my princess. Edward's voice boomed through the foyer. I rounded the corner to find him hugging our daughter, Genesis awkwardly holding a large gift bag beside them. Edward's eyes met mine, and that familiar smirk played across his lips, the one that always meant trouble. Phoebe, he nodded, the house looks nice, though I see you're still using that old furniture we bought together. The furniture I got in the settlement, you mean? I kept my voice light, aware of Callie watching our interaction. Genesis, welcome. The drinks are in the kitchen. More guests started arriving, Callie's friends and their parents, mostly familiar faces from school. I kept one eye on Edward as I played hostess, noting how he whispered with Genesis between greeting people, how his hand kept touching the messenger bag he'd brought in with him. He's up to something, Davis murmured, appearing at my elbow with a fresh glass of wine for me. I know, I replied, taking a grateful sip, but so am I. The party was in full swing when I overheard Edward talking to one of the other parents. Oh, you should hear some of the stories I could tell about our marriage. In fact, he patted his messenger bag meaningfully, and my heart rate kicked up a notch. Mom, Callie called from across the room, can we do cake now? I plastered on my brightest smile. Of course, sweetie. Everyone, it's cake time. As I headed to the kitchen to get the cake ready, I caught Edward's reflection in the hallway mirror. He was pulling something from his bag, something that looked suspiciously like my old leather-bound diary, the diary I'd accidentally left behind during the move. Stella appeared beside me, helping with the candles. Is that what I think it is? Right on schedule, I whispered, striking a match. Let him think he's won. The best revenge is patient. I carried the lit birthday cake toward the dining room, my daughter's excited face illuminated by the dancing flames. Edward stood at the ready with his phone, probably planning to record whatever scene he was about to cause. Little did he know, every move he made today was another step closer to his own downfall. Make a wish, sweetheart, I said to Callie, but in my head, I was making a wish of my own, that Edward's karma was about to catch up with him in the most spectacular way possible. After Callie blew out her candles, Edward sidled up next to me as I cut the cake. Remember how we used to write in our diaries every night? He asked loudly enough for nearby parents to hear. Such an intimate habit. I kept slicing, maintaining my composure. Would you hand me those plates, Edward? You know what's funny? He grabbed the plates but held them just out of reach. I found something interesting while cleaning out the garage last week. Dad, can I have the first piece? Callie interrupted, tugging at his sleeve. Of course, Princess. He handed her a plate, then turned back to me with that predatory smile. We should share some old memories with your friends, Phoebe, for old time's sake. Stella appeared between us, snatching the plates from Edward's hands. I'll help serve. Edward, I think Genesis is looking for you. But Genesis was already approaching, her perfectly manicured hand sliding into Edward's arm. The party is lovely, Phoebe. Edward told me so much about your creative writing. My knife sliced through the cake with more force than necessary. Did he now? Mom, Callie called out, chocolate frosting already smeared across her chin. Can we open presents after cake? Sure, sweetie. Why don't you go sit with your friends? I watched her skip away, then turned to Edward and Genesis. Interesting that you've been discussing my writing. I didn't realize my old diaries were such fascinating reading material. Edward's smirk faltered slightly. He'd expected me to be embarrassed, to react defensively. Instead, I was calling him out in front of his new girlfriend. Well, Genesis shifted uncomfortably. Edward mentioned finding some old journals. And you're okay with him reading his ex-wife's private thoughts? I asked innocently. That's very understanding of you. Before either could respond, Davis approached with an empty plate. This cake is amazing, sis. Hey, Edward, mind if I borrow you for a minute? Got a question about that investment opportunity you mentioned last time. I watched them walk away, Genesis trailing behind like a lost puppy. Stella immediately took their place, helping me serve the remaining cake slices. He's definitely planning something with that diary, she whispered, but you seem weirdly calm about it. Watch this, I murmured, then raised my voice. Callie, honey, remember that special entry Daddy asked you to help him find in my old diary last week? The room grew quieter as Callie answered cheerfully. Yeah, the one about the lawyer meeting. Edward's head snapped around so fast I thought he might get whiplash. His face had gone slightly pale. What lawyer meeting? Genesis asked, looking between Edward and me. Oh, just some boring legal stuff, I said lightly. Edward's been very interested in my old diary entries lately, especially the ones from last month. Last month? Genesis frowned. But you said you found it while cleaning out the garage last week. Edward cut her off. Let's do presents. Callie wants to open presents, right, Princess? As everyone gathered around the gift table, Stella nudged me. Did Callie really help him find an entry? Nope, I whispered back. But he doesn't know that. And now Genesis is suspicious, and he's rattled. You're evil, Stella grinned. I love it. We watched as Callie tore into her presents, her excitement genuine and infectious. Edward kept glancing between his messenger bag and me, clearly recalculating his plan. Mom, look what Uncle Davis got me. Callie held up a beautiful art set, complete with professional colored pencils and a leather-bound sketchbook. Speaking of books, Edward suddenly announced. I have something special to share with everyone. Edward, Genesis touched his arm. Maybe now isn't the best time. He shrugged her off, reaching for his bag. No, no, everyone should hear what Phoebe really thinks about. Actually, I interrupted. Callie, didn't you want to show everyone your new dance routine? The one you've been practicing? Yes! She jumped up, already starting to clear space in the living room. Edward's jaw clenched. His moment had been stolen, and he knew it. I caught Genesis watching him with growing uncertainty, exactly as I'd hoped. As Callie prepared for her impromptu performance, I felt my phone buzz. Another text from Vincenzo. Documents ready. Edward took the bait. I typed back quickly. Hook, line, and sinker. He has no idea what's in the other diary. Because that was Edward's fatal flaw. He always thought he was the smartest person in the room. He never considered that the diary he'd found might not be the only one, or that his daughter's innocent comments might be carefully scripted, or that his ex-wife might have spent months setting up the perfect trap. The best part? He was about to spring it himself. Callie's dance routine bought me 15 precious minutes, during which Edward kept fidgeting with his messenger bag like a teenager with a secret note. When she finished, the room erupted in applause, and I noticed Genesis slip away to the bathroom, her face troubled. That was beautiful, sweetheart, I said, hugging Callie. Why don't you show your friends your new room? We just finished painting it last weekend. As the kids thundered upstairs, Edward made his move. He approached me with the diary in hand, Genesis notably absent from his side. Quite the performance, he said, almost as dramatic as some of your diary entries. You would know, I replied, since you've been so busy reading them. Davis appeared at my shoulder. Everything okay here? Perfect, Edward smiled, all teeth. Just catching up with my favorite ex-wife. I'm your only ex-wife, I pointed out. So far, anyway. Genesis returned just in time to hear this, and I noticed her flinch slightly. Interesting. Genesis, I turned to her warmly. I've been meaning to ask, how did you and Edward meet? He never mentioned. Oh, she glanced at Edward. At a coffee shop, actually, just a few months ago. Months? I raised my eyebrows. But Edward told the divorce court he'd been seeing you for. Phoebe, Edward cut in sharply. I think it's time we shared some entertainment with our guests. I found something fascinating in this old diary of yours. Stella, who'd been circulating with fresh drinks, paused nearby. Is that the diary you asked Callie about last week, Edward? The one with all those interesting legal notes? Edward's confidence wavered for a split second. What? No, this is different. My phone buzzed again. Vincenzo. Court recorder confirmed. Everything from last month's meeting is documented. You know what would be fun? I said brightly. We should compare diaries, because I could have sworn I left my old one at the house, but this morning I found another one in my desk. Very similar looking, easy to mix up. Edward's face went from smug to uncertain. What other diary? Mom, Callie called from upstairs. Can you come here a minute? Excuse me, I smiled sweetly. Duty calls. Feel free to start your dramatic reading without me, Edward. I'm sure whatever you found is fascinating. As I headed upstairs, I heard Genesis ask, what did she mean about the divorce court? I found Callie and her friends playing with her new art set, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding below. What's up, sweetie? Can we have ice cream up here? Nice try. Food stays downstairs. I kissed her forehead. Having fun? Yeah, but... She lowered her voice. Dad keeps acting weird, like when he made me help him look for that book last week. Oh? I kept my voice casual. What did he have you look for? He wanted to find something about a meeting, but then he got really mad when he couldn't find it. Perfect. I heard raised voices from downstairs. You said we met before the divorce was final. Genesis's voice carried clearly. Genesis, honey, let me explain. I took my time returning downstairs, pausing at the top to text Vincenzo. Almost showtime. Stand by. The scene I returned to was better than I could have hoped. Genesis stood near the front door, arms crossed, while Edward clutched the diary like a shield. Several party parents were pretending not to watch, while obviously hanging on every word. Everything okay? I asked innocently. Fine, Edward snapped. Just fine. In fact, why don't we all sit down and I'll share some choice excerpts from Phoebe's private thoughts. Edward, Genesis warned, don't. But he was too far gone, too committed to his plan to humiliate me. He flipped open the diary with flourish. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, let me tell you about my ex-wife's secret thoughts. Stella caught my eye across the room and gave me a subtle nod. Davis shifted closer to the stairs, ready to keep the kids occupied upstairs. Everything was falling into place. You really want to do this here? I asked Edward. At our daughter's birthday party? Oh, yes, he smiled nastily. I really do. Shall we start with your entry from March 15th? I leaned against the wall, crossing my arms. If you insist. But maybe we should wait for Vincenzo to arrive. I invited him to stop by, you know. My lawyer does love a good story. Edward's hand trembled slightly as he held the diary, but he was too proud, too invested in his revenge to back down now. He cleared his throat and began to read, not realizing he was about to trigger his own downfall. March 15th, Edward read aloud, his voice dripping with theatrical disdain. Today, I realized my marriage is beyond saving. That's the day you forgot our anniversary, I commented casually, for the third year in a row. He shot me a warning glare and continued. Edward thinks I don't know about the money he's hiding. Genesis shifted uncomfortably. Edward, maybe we should… No, no, he waved her off. This gets better. Listen to this. I can't believe how naive I've been. All those late nights at the office, the ones you spent with your secretary, I supplied helpfully. Before Genesis? A few parents exchanged knowing looks. Edward's face reddened, but he plowed ahead, flipping to another page. Here's a good one. Meeting with the lawyer today. Edward has no idea what's coming. He looked up triumphantly. See, she's been plotting against me all along. Which lawyer meeting is that? I asked innocently. The one from last month, or… Edward faltered, scanning the page more carefully. This is… Wait. The doorbell rang. Stella opened it to reveal Vincenzo, right on cue, carrying a leather briefcase. Sorry I'm late, he announced. Traffic was terrible. Oh, Edward, I see you found the diary. Excellent. What is he doing here? Edward demanded. I told you he was coming, I reminded him. Please continue reading. You were just getting to the interesting part about the lawyer meetings. Genesis stepped forward. Edward, what's going on? What lawyer meetings? Nothing. He flipped through the pages frantically. This isn't… Where's the entry about… About what? I pressed. The offshore accounts? The backdated documents? Or maybe the real estate deal you forgot to mention during the divorce proceedings? The color drained from Edward's face. That's not… Those weren't… Dad? Callie's voice came from the top of the stairs. Why are you yelling? Princess, go back to your friends. Edward called up, his voice strained. The adults are just talking. Davis smoothly intercepted Callie. Hey, kiddo, let's go check out that new art set properly. I bet we can draw something awesome. Once they disappeared, Edward rounded on me. You set this up, this whole thing, the diary, the party, all of it. Set what up? I asked. You're the one who brought my diary to our daughter's birthday party to read aloud. I merely invited my lawyer to attend, since you seemed so interested in legal matters lately. The diary entry you wanted, Vincenzo added helpfully, about the offshore accounts? That would be in the other diary, the one you had Callie help you search for last week. Genesis's eyes widened. What offshore accounts? There aren't any, Edward started. Actually, Vincenzo interrupted, opening his briefcase. I have the documentation right here, along with some very interesting phone recordings from last month's meeting where you accidentally admitted to. Shut up, Edward shouted, throwing the diary down. This is ridiculous. Genesis, we're leaving. Not with my car, you're not, Genesis said quietly. I think I'll call an Uber. The room had gone deadly silent. Every parent at the party was watching the scene unfold with a mixture of horror and fascination. Edward, I said softly, you really should have read the diary more carefully before deciding to use it against me, or at least check the dates of the entries. He snatched up the diary again, thumbing through it desperately. His face went from angry to confused to horrified as he finally realized what he was actually reading. This isn't, he stammered. Your own words? I finished for him. Amazing what people will write down when they think no one's watching, like in email drafts, or personal journals, or legal depositions. You had no right to protect myself and our daughter from your schemes? I picked up the diary he'd dropped. You brought this on yourself, Edward. I just made sure there was a record of it. Genesis was already at the door, her phone in hand. I'll be sending someone for my things tomorrow, Edward, and my lawyer will be in touch. Genesis, wait! He started after her, then turned back to glare at me. This isn't over. Actually, Vincenzo said, holding up a document, according to these papers, it very much is. As Edward stormed out after Genesis, Stella appeared at my side with a fresh glass of wine. Well, that was quite a show. The show's not over yet, I murmured, watching Edward's retreating back. That was just Act 1. Upstairs, I could hear Callie laughing with her friends, blissfully unaware of the drama that had just unfolded, and that's exactly how I wanted it to stay. Her protected, happy, while her father's carefully constructed house of cards came tumbling down. The party parents started gathering their children, making polite but hasty exits. I couldn't blame them. They'd just witnessed enough drama to fuel the school pickup line gossip for months. I'll start cleaning up, Stella offered, collecting paper plates. First, Vincenzo interrupted, we should discuss what happens next. Edward's not going to take this lying down. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Genesis, her mascara slightly smudged. My Uber's coming, but can we talk? I nodded, leading her to the kitchen while Stella and Vincenzo handled damage control in the living room. I had no idea, Genesis said immediately, about any of it. The timing of our relationship, the accounts, none of it. I know. I handed her a glass of water. That's why I made sure you were here today. You could have warned me privately. Would you have believed me? She took a shaky sip. No, I wouldn't have. He told me you were bitter, unstable, trying to ruin his life. And now? Now, I'm wondering what else he lied about. She pulled out her phone, showing me a text from Edward. Baby, don't listen to her. I can explain everything. Meet me at our spot in an hour. Let me guess, I said. The coffee shop where you met? How did you? Because that's where he took me when he needed to smooth things over. It's his go-to manipulation spot. Public enough that you can't make a scene, private enough for intimate conversations. Upstairs, I heard Callie's laughter mixing with her friends' voices. Davis was doing an excellent job keeping them occupied. There's something else you should know, I told Genesis. Check your banking app. She frowned but did as suggested. Her face went pale. My savings. They're gone. How did you? I didn't. Edward did, about an hour ago, when he realized things weren't going his way. He's done it before. Vincenzo appeared in the doorway. Miss Kelly, if you'd like to press charges, I have the documentation ready. Genesis's phone buzzed again. Edward, calling now. She declined the call. I have a better idea, she said, her voice hardening. You mentioned another diary? Before I could respond, Callie came bounding into the kitchen. Mom, can we have a sleepover? Please, just two friends? I caught Davis hovering protectively in the doorway. Sure, sweetie. Why don't you go pick out some movies while I talk to their parents? After she left, Genesis stood up straighter. I want to help. Whatever you're planning next, I want in. It's not about revenge, I clarified. It's about justice and protecting others from falling into the same trap. Like me, you mean? Her laugh was bitter. Trust me, I get it now. So, about that other diary, Stella joined us, holding up her phone. Edwards just posted on Facebook, says you're trying to frame him, that you've lost your mind. Right on schedule, Vincenzo smiled. Screenshot everything. My phone lit up with a text from Edward. You think you're so clever, but I still have the real diary, the one that'll destroy you. He doesn't know, Genesis realized, about the switch. Nope. I showed them my phone, and he's about to make his biggest mistake yet. Mom, Callie called from the living room. Sarah and Emma's parents said yes. Be right there. I turned to Genesis. You should probably go. Your Uber's here, and you don't want to be late for coffee. She smiled, a real smile this time, with a hint of steel behind it. No, I definitely don't. Send me the details. After she left, Vincenzo gathered his papers. Everything's in motion. The bank records are ready, the recordings are secured, and the second diary is safe. What about the custody modification? I asked quietly. After today's display, it's practically guaranteed. No judge will look kindly on a father who tries to humiliate his ex-wife at their child's birthday party. Stella started loading the dishwasher. You know he's gonna try something desperate now. Counting on it, I replied, watching through the window as Genesis's Uber pulled away. He always lashes out when he's cornered, and this time, we're ready. My phone buzzed again. Edward had tagged me in his Facebook rant. The comments were already flowing in, exactly as planned. Every angry word, every false accusation, every threat was another nail in his coffin. Mom, Callie appeared again. Can we make popcorn for the movie? Of course, baby. I smiled at my daughter, so innocent and unaware of the storm swirling around her. Extra butter? As I prepared the popcorn, listening to the girls giggle upstairs, I felt a strange sense of calm. Edward thought he was about to expose my secrets, but he didn't realize he was walking right into a trap of his own making. The real diary, the one he thought would destroy me, was about to destroy him instead. The next morning, while Callie and her friends were still asleep upstairs, my phone exploded with notifications. Edward had been busy. Have you seen this? Stella's voice came through the speaker before I could even say hello. He's gone completely off the rails. I opened Facebook to find a live video of Edward, looking disheveled and angry, holding up what he thought was my real diary. Time to expose the truth about Phoebe, he announced to his viewers. Let's start with her secret meetings with my business partners. My phone buzzed with another call. Genesis. I put her on conference with Stella. He's at the coffee shop, Genesis reported, ranting to everyone who'll listen. I'm at a table in the corner, recording everything. Perfect, I said. Is he reading from the diary yet? Just started. Oh God, he's reading about the offshore accounts. But he thinks he's exposing you, when he's actually exposing himself, Stella finished. Brilliant. The doorbell rang. It was Davis carrying breakfast bagels. Morning, sis. Ready for phase 2? I nodded, pulling up Edward's live stream on my laptop. He was getting more worked up by the minute, reading entries that he believed were mine, but were actually careful reconstructions of his own misdeeds. April 3rd, he read dramatically to his growing audience. Transferred another 50,000 to the Cayman account. No one suspects a thing. My phone lit up with a text from Vincenzo. Police watching the stream, standing by. Mom, Callie appeared in the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. Why is Dad on your computer? I quickly closed the laptop. Just some grown-up stuff, honey. How about some breakfast? Uncle Davis brought bagels. Can we eat in the blanket fort we made? Sure, take some up for your friends too. After she left, I reopened the laptop. Edward's viewer count was climbing as he dug himself deeper. May 15th, he continued reading, his voice triumphant. Met with Marcus about hiding the real estate profits. The divorce court will never find out. Genesis's voice came through the phone. 3 police officers just walked in. We watched through the live stream as Edward finally noticed the officers approaching his table. His face went from smug to panicked in an instant. Sir, one officer said, clearly audible on the stream, we need you to come with us. What? No, you don't understand. I'm exposing her crimes. It's all right here in her diary. That diary, a familiar voice said off camera, is evidence of your own financial fraud, Edward. The camera shook as Edward spun around to find Vincenzo standing there, holding a stack of documents. You see, Vincenzo continued, loud enough for the stream to pick up. Those aren't Phoebe's words you're reading. They're yours, from your own journal, rewritten in a very similar book. And you've just confessed to everything. Live on Facebook. The color drained from Edward's face. This isn't Edward Salazar. One officer stepped forward. You're under arrest for financial fraud, tax evasion, and attempted witness intimidation. The live stream ended abruptly, but not before capturing Edward's expression of pure shock as the handcuffs clicked into place. Mom, Callie called down, the bagel fort is ready. Coming, sweetie. I turned to Davis. Stay here. This next part might get messy. Of course. Go be with Callie. We'll handle everything else. I headed upstairs with a plate of bagels, leaving behind the sounds of my phone blowing up with messages and calls. In the girls' blanket fort, everything was still innocent and peaceful. Mom, look. Callie held up a drawing. It's our family. The picture showed her, me, Davis, and Stella, all holding hands. Edward wasn't in it. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from Genesis. It's done. They're taking him to the station. I've given my statement about the stolen savings. Thank you for helping me see the truth. Mom, you're not listening, Callie pouted. Sorry, baby. I put my phone away and crawled into the fort. Tell me about your drawing. As Callie chatted excitedly about her artwork, I heard the faint sound of sirens in the distance. Edward's karma had finally caught up with him, but more importantly, my daughter was safe, happy, and surrounded by love. The diary that Edward thought would destroy me had become the instrument of his own undoing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about letting someone's own actions become their punishment. Can we have another party next weekend? Callie asked, completely unaware of the morning's events. Sure, I smiled, hugging her close. But maybe something smaller this time. 3 days after the birthday party, I sat in Vincenzo's office, watching the media fallout unfold on his wall-mounted TV. Edward's arrest had made local news, and his Facebook confession had gone viral. The DA is offering a deal, Vincenzo said, muting the TV, in exchange for information about his business partner's involvement. And Genesis's money, already recovered, along with funds from 3 other women he'd done the same thing to. A knock at the door interrupted us. It was Davis, looking grim. Callie's school called. Edward's mother showed up, trying to pick her up. My heart stopped. What? It's okay, he quickly added. They followed the custody agreement. She couldn't take her, but she made a scene saying you'd framed her son. We need to file a restraining order, Vincenzo said, already reaching for his phone, against both Edward and his mother. My phone buzzed. A text from Stella. You need to see this. Edward's wife before you just went public with her story. I pulled up the article on my phone. The headline read, Local Businessman's Pattern of Fraud and Manipulation. Ex-wife speaks out. This changes things, Vincenzo said, reading over my shoulder. With multiple victims coming forward, the DA might not even need that deal. Another knock. This time it was Genesis, carrying a familiar leather-bound book. Found this in his office safe, she said, placing it on Vincenzo's desk. His actual diary, the original one you based your decoy on. You broke into his office? Davis asked, impressed. Didn't have to. I was still listed as his executive assistant. Had all the codes. She smiled grimly. Amazing what men forget to change when they're busy covering their tracks. My phone rang. Callie's school again. This time, I put it on speaker. Mrs. Salazar, your daughter would like to speak with you. Mom? Callie's voice was shaky. Grandma was here. She said Dad's in trouble because of you. Honey, listen to me. I kept my voice calm. Your dad made some bad choices. Adult choices that have nothing to do with you. You're safe, and that's what matters. But when is he coming home? The room fell silent. How do you explain to an 8-year-old that her father might be going to prison? Sweetie, remember how we talked about consequences? About how choices have results? Like when I didn't do my homework and couldn't watch TV? Similar to that, yes. Your dad made some bad choices, and now he has to deal with the consequences. Is that why he was so mad at your diary? Genesis raised her eyebrows at me. I shook my head slightly. Some things Callie didn't need to know. Something like that? Hey, why don't we have Uncle Davis pick you up early? We could get ice cream. After hanging up, Vincenzo spread several documents across his desk. We need to move fast. Edward's preliminary hearing is tomorrow, and his mother's interference gives us grounds for an emergency custody modification. Plus this, Genesis held up her phone, showing a series of threatening texts from Edward. He's been busy in holding. Forward those to me, Vincenzo said, and the DA. My phone buzzed again. Stella had sent a link to another news article. More victims were coming forward, not just romantic partners, but business associates who'd been caught in Edward's schemes. Mrs. Reynolds? Vincenzo's assistant poked her head in. The DA is on line 1, and there's a detective here to speak with Ms. Kelly. Genesis stood. That's my cue. Time to make my official statement. Thank you, I said quietly, for everything. She paused at the door. Thank you for opening my eyes before he took everything from me, too. After she left, Davis squeezed my shoulder. I'll go get Callie. Ice cream and a movie night might be exactly what she needs. Alone with Vincenzo, I finally asked the question that had been nagging at me. Did we go too far? Too far? He raised an eyebrow. Phoebe, we didn't do anything except create circumstances where Edward could expose himself. Every word he read on that live stream was his own. Every action he took was his choice. But Callie? We'll understand someday that you protected her from a man who would have eventually hurt her too, just like he hurt everyone else in his life. My phone lit up with another call, Edward's mother again. I declined it. Ready for the next phase? Vincenzo asked, holding up the custody modification papers. I thought about Callie's drawing, the one without Edward in it, about how she'd unconsciously known something wasn't right, about how sometimes protecting someone means making hard choices. Ready, I said, picking up the pen. Let's finish this. The courthouse hallway felt colder than usual as I waited outside the judge's chambers. Stella sat beside me while Davis paced nervously. Stop wearing a hole in the floor, Stella told him. You're making me dizzy. Sorry, he muttered. Just can't believe Edward's mother showed up. Through the heavy wooden doors, we could hear muffled voices. Vincenzo presenting our case for full custody, Edward's public defender attempting damage control, and his mother's shrill objections. My phone buzzed with a text from Genesis. Just finished my testimony. Judge looked ready to throw the book at him. Heading your way. The doors opened, and Vincenzo emerged with a satisfied smile. Judge wants to see you, Phoebe. Alone. Inside the chambers, Judge Martinez sat behind her desk, Edward's original diary open in front of her. Mrs. Salazar, she began, then corrected herself. Phoebe, I've reviewed everything, the financial records, the witness statements, and most importantly, the impact on your daughter. I gripped the arms of my chair, waiting. What interests me most, she continued, isn't what you did, but what you didn't do. You could have exposed him immediately, could have ruined him the moment you found evidence of his crimes. Instead, you created a situation where he would expose himself. I needed to protect Callie, I said simply. Yes, you did, and that's why I'm granting you full custody, with supervised visitation for Edward, if and when he's not incarcerated. My eyes burned with tears of relief. There's something else, she added, holding up Edward's diary. The DA is very interested in these entries about his business partners. This goes deeper than anyone suspected. Outside the chambers, Stella practically tackled me with a hug. Well? Before I could answer, Genesis rushed up, slightly out of breath. Just saw Edward being led out in handcuffs. No bail this time. Full custody, I managed to say. It's over. Not quite, Vincenzo interrupted, checking his phone. The FBI just arrived at Edward's office. Apparently, his diary implicated some very interesting people in some very illegal activities. Mom! We all turned to see Callie running down the hallway, followed by her art teacher, Ms. Reed. Sorry, Ms. Reed said. She insisted on coming when she heard you were here. We were on a field trip to the museum next door. I knelt down to hug Callie. How was the museum? Amazing! I saw this beautiful painting of a storm, and it made me think about how sometimes scary things can also be beautiful. Out of the mouths of babes. Speaking of beautiful things, Davis said, who's up for celebrating? I hear there's a new ice cream place downtown. Actually, Callie said, suddenly serious, can we go home? I want to show you something. At home, Callie ran straight to her room and returned with her sketchbook. She opened it to reveal a series of drawings, our family in different scenes, all showing happiness, all without Edward. Ms. Reed says art helps us process things, she explained. So I drew our family how I want it to be. The last drawing showed me, Callie, Davis, and Stella in front of our house, with Genesis and Vincenzo nearby. Above them, she'd written, My Real Family. This is perfect, I whispered, hugging her close. My phone buzzed one final time, a news alert about Edward's arrest and the federal investigation. But for once, I didn't check it. Hey, kiddo, Stella said. Want to help me make those special sundaes? The ones with extra everything? As Callie ran off with Stella, Davis picked up the sketchbook. She's going to be okay, you know. Kids are resilient. Thanks to all of you, I said. I couldn't have done this alone. You never had to, Genesis added, joining us. That was Edward's mistake, thinking he had to control everything alone. He never understood the power of having people in your corner. The sound of laughter drifted from the kitchen, along with the clatter of ice cream scoops and sprinkle shakers. Come on, Davis grinned. before they use up all the hot fudge. In the kitchen, watching Callie direct her Sunday making operation with theatrical seriousness, I realized something profound. Edward had spent years trying to write our story, controlling the narrative, manipulating the plot. But in the end, we had rewritten it ourselves, creating something better than revenge. A new chapter filled with truth, justice, and most importantly, love. Mom, Callie called, your Sunday's ready. I made it special. I joined my daughter, my real family, at the table, ready to start our new story together.